Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the zoo. The minions with me tonight, at least the two that are starting out the show, and will be gaining a third as time goes on, are JenTMaxi
Hello.
and the ass himself, the donkey.
Good evening.
And of course, I'm the keeper for the night, Sanguine. For a while there, it seemed like I was just going to have the donkey on tonight, which would have made this sound like a really bad daytime radio show, because it would have been the Spurg and the donkey. So I was tossing around, should it be WZZO, the Spurg and the donkey, as the title, or whether I should go for a different radio station. But thankfully, I had two other people volunteer, so I didn't have to worry about that. And the late edition has jumped in, which is, of course, Sora Luna. How you doing?
Hello. It's Sora.
Good evening. Only about 3 minutes late.
Yeah, not very. Actually, less than that. About a minute.
About a minute.
Yeah.
Sora, I'm
Hey.
sorry about Kelowna.
What the fuck's happening in Kelowna?
Well,
I don't
I'm
care
not
about
gonna,
Kelowna.
I'm not going to take any responsibility for dumb people, but for some reason the anti-vaxxers have decided that the best.
the stupid the assholes at Remembrance Day.
Yeah, they've decided the best place to do their
Yeah.
protest was at the Remembrance Day, and I was like, listen, I absolutely 100% approve of protest. I do believe in freedom of speech.
But sometimes there's a
place.
time and a place. Yeah.
Yeah. Every time there's a time and a place. It's one of the ironclad rules of existing as part of a social species. There is a time and a place. Sometimes the time and place are the right time and place for you to do what you want to do. Sometimes they aren't. Fucking learn the difference.
It's like I can't complain about the Greenpeace assholes who take up streets and shit and block entrances and shit like that. I bitch about those people because they are inconveniencing the people. But what you guys did was snub the nose at vets. That's not a conservative position. I'm just saying you're not going to get anyone from that group. So I'm not sure who these people are at this point. That's not a conservative talking point. It's not even a middle ground talking point. It's kind of one of those things where I put my foot down is putting your politics in front of people who have done you no harm, like your vets or like children in children's hospitals. Like there's just certain places where you just don't need to take your shit there.
Yeah. Agreed.
Don't gift your opponents unforced blunders. Because the moment that you start doing shit like that, I absolutely love the fact that the English are turning on the Extinction Rebellion people and the Insulate Britain people, because they're a bunch of feckless cunts.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be turned on. So their bad tactics, I don't like their bad tactics, but I like the result of them deciding to use bad tactics, if that makes sense.
Because it shows them as being kind of selfish. Like, yeah, you can have.
It's also the dumbest thing that they do. At least here in my city, they block all the main arteries, so they'll shut down a full bridge.
Mhm.
They protested and blocked twice the airport, so the highway to the airport, meaning people had to, if they were lucky, they could reroute around. Not to get to the airport, I should say, because that's pretty one direction, but to leave that area and go home.
Yep.
I have a friend whose brother works at the distribution for Canada Post, out just in that area, and took him 2 hours to get home in October when they blocked that area. And I don't understand who they think they get, because everyone's complaining, say, listen, you're not going to get the common person who has to commute to work, who's trying to do all this, is not going to get on your side. at this point you're just being a nuisance and what the hell. But then our government here, at least my local government, is so pansy-assed, excuse me,
Oh, no worries.
because that's what they are.
A moment ago, your ass is not going to
But
suddenly shock people that my cunt didn't.
It's also kind of like go no you finish
they don't do anything now, and I know we have the legal right for peaceful assembly and protest. I feel like they're almost getting beyond that. They're like fine, they're crossing the line. But also this is a thing where government kind of and a lot of people blame the police aren't doing anything, but the police are just an arm of the government. They're not going to do anything when they know they're not going to be protected by. The most they do is direct traffic and try to minimize the damage, but they're not about to go unless they're told, okay, it's time for you to start arresting people or asking them to move along. And if they don't move along, you can start arresting a couple people, which ended up happening a few times here. They spend all of this Extension Rebellion. People had Occupy October. So basically 3 of the 4 weeks, they had every other day or every day protest dates. And nobody did anything. And then at the very end, of like 4 people got arrested or something because they didn't move along when they were told to, when it was time for them to move along.
You know,
but in that time, they shut down a lot of throwaways in the city.
Well, that's the irony, though, is like nobody really shuts down their cars when they do that. So they've just stopped traffic and had people running their cars for a time.
Yeah. See, the thing that I wish if I had my ideal world, what the response to those nutters gluing themselves to various objects and road surfaces would be is not just leave them. I would want a counter protest at every single one of their protests, but the counter protest wouldn't be really saying or doing anything other than it would become a massive cookout.
Have a barbecue.
Yeah, just a massive cookout, just feet away from the people that are glued face first to the roadway. And go down the line, feeding the people that are getting pissed off by the lunatics glued to various objects, and have a fan just blowing across the food, going straight towards the people glued down.
In my country, you'd get arrested for that, for offering people food without having
proper license.
Safety. Yeah.
That's the thing that pisses me off about
I
it.
know.
Because that shouldn't be a fucking issue. But my ideal setup would be having that, and then, like I said, just a fan blowing across the top of the barbecues, going to the people that are glued down. No one give them anything unless they get up and come for it.
That's exactly why they stop it, though, is because they know entirely that that's kind of how the Christian community kind of reacts to stuff like that. Not even just the Christian community, but legit everywhere up here where you see them targeting people, it is the people who will feed you.
Yep. Yeah, but I would do that because then they're glued down. They don't have solvents because they never bring the solvents. They always demand that other people bring the solvents to get them unstuck. No. Don't have anyone come and get them unstuck. They can stay there until they're willing to rip whatever they glued down off. And just have the food smells come wafting the entire time that they're glued there. And if it gets to the point where they might die because they're unwilling to peel themselves off, then sure, take them to the hospital and get them treated proper. But unless it reaches that point, no, just leave them.
It's okay. They'll be fine. You can get skin grafts all the time nowadays. It's, we live in the future.
I should ask you about that. How hard is it to just donate extra skin?
I would not know.
Dang it.
That is definitely a sanguine question.
It is something that it's kind of like you don't really just have a storehouse of livers sitting around.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a, if there's someone that needs skin, then you can volunteer to get tested for compatibility.
So basically just put myself out there.
Yes.
Dang it.
It's basically like, if you really want to donate skin, there's probably a group that is out there trying to find people willing to donate various organs. You can probably get in touch with them and go, hey, I'm willing to donate skin. Can you help me with this? And they'll be able to figure out, okay, we need to do this sort of testing in order to see if you're matched to any of these people. And if so, then we can get you scheduled.
So many reasons where I can think I might be out of luck for that one. I know this is skin, so my blood type maybe doesn't matter, but I may be positive, which makes me an asshole. It doesn't, but not, you know.
Well, it does to a fair degree, because it's the closer you are genetically to the person that you're granting a graft to, the less likely it is that they'll have graft v host.
Yeah.
And it's one of those weird things where when you're talking about animal organs and shit like that, you want them different enough but similar enough so that the chance of them transferring disease diminishes, but the chance of them avoiding graft v host is sufficient. So pigs are a fairly good option for a lot of organs. And they use pig hearts, for instance, or one of the common workarounds for not having a human heart to slap in a person. But when it comes to people, you want them as close as possible so that it's the highest avoidance of graft v host.
That's very cool, actually.
Yep.
What an interesting way to try to kill someone in a very long, drawn-out process.
Oh, yeah.
I was just looking to
Make
get
them
skin removed
reject-
for free, that's all.
It's like, damn it. Sorry.
Like, don't get me wrong. If it helps somebody out with like burn victims or anything, honestly, I would rather it be for that reason. But yeah, it's just I lost 100 pounds, you know, and I've been looking at my thighs going, this is something I don't know how to fix without surgery.
Yeah, like I said,
that's a problem when you lose quite a bit of weight, and if it's done very quickly, even if it's like a healthy way of doing it quickly, if your body doesn't bounce back, you're looking at surgery.
Yeah.
Yep. Which is part of the reason why you're told to make sure that you stay hydrated while doing that, and beyond just the normal benefits of hydration. If you make sure that you're drinking a lot of fluids as you lose weight, it increases the chance of your skin being able to properly retract.
I did that, but I think the problem is I also live in Alberta, and it's one of those things where I will complain about that. It's super dry here. Like, anyone who comes off a plane is usually encouraged to go and buy at least a liter of water right away, because you notice it right away. Like I had this lady that I worked with from Ireland, and it was such a stark contrast. Mind you, Ireland is like damp, you know, raining all the time. But she said the first time it rained in our province, her whole family stood outside for like a good hour just sitting in the rain because they were just like, "Oh my God, there's moisture." We're kind of one of those places, but that kind of was one of those things. Like, I did increase my water, but I didn't use. There's supposed to be oils that you're supposed to apply to your skin too. And I didn't do that either. Like, I still have them now. Like, I can use some of them for the stretch marks, which I do. But, yeah, it's the overabundance of skin between my thighs where I'm like, yeah, that's the part where, I mean, I was doing exercises too, which is probably why I lost a little bit quicker down there. Because I was doing sidewalks up and down rather large hills for, like, hours. For a couple months, and yeah, that did a little bit of damage on my butt.
But yeah, like I said, if you're trying to find a way of donating. There's a bunch of different groups that try to find donors and whatnot. For example, the liver is the one that you can take segments of.
Okay.
And if I remember correctly, it's the liver. I'm almost positive that it's the liver. You can take a portion of the liver and you can transplant
Doesn't
that
it
portion
kind of
liver.
grow?
Yes,
It can
kind
regenerate. Yeah.
of regenerates. So you're able to take a chunk of liver, implant that in someone else. The chunk of liver ends up growing back into a full liver in the person that it came from. And the chunk that you grafted into someone else ends up regenerating into a full liver in that person. So you end up with 2 livers for the price of 1.
Okay.
And there's a number of other organs that you're able to have multiples of, so you're able to give one, keep the other type deal. So there's organizations that do try to find people willing to donate their organs, their liver, their kidney, shit like that, and they'll hook them up with recipients and then schedule the surgeries so that the donor and recipient can be matched up, get the procedure done, good to go. Then there's... So, since they're already doing that for livers and kidneys and a number of other organs,
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet they probably also have some component, or they know of another group that does it for skin grafts.
Mm-hmm.
I like, I'm with Lisa here in chat. If they pay for liposuction for me, they can help themselves to any loose skin that needs to be removed. That's kind of like the goal, isn't it? I do. So this is a joke, and my friend jokes about this because she's fine, but she got hit by a car, and part of it was a facial reconstruction, and she laughs because she got a free facelift on the government's dime.
Nice.
Because of that, and it's good, looks great, but I always thought, like, well, now you know, because a lot of these things aren't covered in Canada, right? Because it's cosmetic procedures, you're not going to cover that.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's reconstructive plastic surgery, it should be. You have to still fight for it, but it should be covered. And yeah, so there you go. There's a way.
It's just one of those things where it's not that I don't want to, like, if I had the funds to do it, yeah, I would just do it, and then I would still donate it. You know, I would just put it on alert, just so you know, I'm getting this surgery done, and I'm gonna have this skin that I'm not gonna have use for. So if somebody needs it for a burn, these are, you know, and I would throw out the AB positive thing, because that is something on my mind. Like, you know, it doesn't mean that someone out there doesn't also have that who could use a skin graft.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just I'm aware of the fact that I'm kind of poisonous to everybody who doesn't have A. Which is very Canadian of me. I don't know.
And this is just reminding me of something that it is completely out of left field for anyone else. But you guys know that there are human-bound books, right?
Yes.
I'm wondering if there's anyone that ends up taking donated flesh in order to rebind those books.
That is a good question. That would be very, very neat. Or would they say, okay, well, we are in this current year, and we have to use like pig instead?
Yeah,
you know,
because pig leather and human leather are very similar, but they're slightly different, and they're vastly different than standard cow leather.
moisturize me. Hold on, I have to find her.
So yeah, there's those books that are bound in human leather, and now I find myself curious. Do they take donations, or how the hell do they rebind those books when they get to a point where they need to be rebound.
I mean, they're not going to be cheap books to begin with, so I can imagine the skin. They're probably going to be willing to pay something for the skin.
Oh, yeah, most of them would be like ridiculous restoration works for like the Library of Congress or various very old university libraries, such as the Bodleian, would probably have several human-bound books.
Yet again, I wouldn't mind donating to that. That's science in my mind, or it's historical.
Yeah, that's just something that this conversation made me go, I wonder how they do that.
Well, there's got to be solutions to problems. Like I'm definitely not like the worst out of the lot of people who have skin problems from weight loss. Like there's definitely other people who low income lost weight because it was better for their health and to help them get out and about and get jobs and shit like that. And then all of a sudden you've got all that skin, and yeah, it can actually affect how you go about things. It really can. Mine isn't so bad. Like I was slow enough with my weight loss that it's not that bad. It's just I look at it now and I'm just like, if I just had like $5,000, $10,000, I don't know how much that shit costs because it's always more expensive than it really needs to be.
I can't really speak as much to why it's that way in Canada, but I can speak to why medical bills are as obscene on the face of them as they are in the US. And it's something that not many people really factor in when they're talking about medical bills, because everyone seems to have this idea that, oh, medical bills are just that expensive because it's a bunch of hospitals and health companies that are trying to screw people out of money. There's that common narrative. A large portion, perhaps even a plurality of the bill that is accrued when it comes to medical charges is covering for the malpractice insurance of goddamn everyone that even so much as breathed in the same room that you did. Because you have to cover all the nurses, all the techs, the doctor, the facility or clinic that you're currently in.
Mm-hmm.
If a pharmacist is involved, you have to pay for the pharmacist. You have to pay for the pharmacy that they're running out of in order to cover them as well. If there was hospital transport involved, so a non-nurse, non-tech, just one of the orderlies or just someone who moves a person from point A to point B.
We have like an inter-hospital transfer bus thing.
The ambulances, which can be used for that, inter-facility transport, and I was also talking about the intra-facility transport.
Oh, intra. Okay, yeah.
Yep. So in any situation where it's not one of the nurses or doctors moving you, but it's some other hospital staff, because some facilities have a kind of like a hospital porter type deal.
Yeah.
They have to be covered with insurance because they're interacting with you. So if anything goes wrong, in the US, we're fucking ridiculously litigious. So everyone gets sued all the way up the chain, from the most minor person to the most major person to the facilities. Just everyone gets hit, and that means that all of them need coverage, which means that they need to increase the cost in order to cover all the coverage. And that's one of the things that people forget about, which always drives me crazy, because there's the constant comparisons of, well, this country does their health insurance this way and this one does it this way, and I'm going, okay, how many of them allow you to sue for as many things as we allow you to sue for?
Yeah.
That's not really quite what I mean, though. Like, a lot of countries now do have programs for people to lose weight. Like the obesity programs are actually growing in a lot of Western countries.
Oh
But
yeah, they're
my thing,
preventative health programs.
but my thinking is like, if you're going to do an operation that helps to shrink somebody's stomach, why wouldn't you follow up with an operation that would help them later to remove some of the skin? Especially if you knew, like, if you knew someone was 600 pounds and
Because it's expensive.
yeah,
Like, for
And-
example, I can tell you, because I have knowledge of bariatrics here. We had the programs
Mhm.
in the 90s. Quite a few people went through it. Then then the hospitals at the time that were doing it decided, meh, it's too much money. We can't be bothered to go through with following up with everyone, so they shut it down completely.
Yeah.
Well, what happens to those patients? They're shit out of luck.
yeah,
All you need re-referrals. You're having complications decades later. These people have to be on T3s for the rest of their life. They also have to be on a fairly liquid diet, or else they'll bounce back. And if they're not careful, all sorts of restrictions they have to do. But what if something goes wrong and they need like further therapy or something like that to help them get back on shape? Or nobody's there anymore. Nobody exists that they can help them. They are just cut off.
yeah,
And if they try to get into another bariatrics program, well, that's going to be 2, 3, 4 years of wait, because they only are giving them certain. And I am talking about BC, like certain amount of budget per person per year. So, for example, if you're bariatric, like a morbidly obese, basically a bariatric person wanting a colonoscopy,
Mhm.
they only do those like 2 of them a year.
yeah.
So you're gonna die before you get a colonoscopy if you've got cancer, because it's they don't have the facility, they don't have the trained people to do those people, they don't have all that, and that's why they don't follow up. It's shitty and it's stupid, but it's just they literally would have to, like, I don't know where they're gonna find the money from, right?
Yeah.
They end up having to ration it.
Yeah.
See, that's a lot of the problems is they don't really, I don't think they really explain that to people. Like, really take, I don't know. Yeah, it's a complicated mess.
Yeah, the thing is that you can get the argument for why a preventative health program should be funded through a bunch of different ways of arguing for it, but as long as it's preventative health, you're more likely to get funding for that than something that is not preventative health. Obesity, you can explain as being preventative health. The only way that you'd be able to then argue that, well, we should also hack off the excess skin is if you had just absolutely rampant infections of folds of the formerly obese.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is kind of what I mean. Like, for my thing, I admit that mine's being selfish. Like, I mean, that's why I make the joke about donating it, because yeah, I'm broke. I wouldn't mind a cheap way of getting it done. But I'm more meaning like the people who actually should have the operation, like that, the rare ones who probably should have it. Like, if you know that somebody has so much skin that their feet now look like the Elephant Man, it makes sense to help them remove that so that they can, go on with the rest of their life. Like, they've already got the rest of it down. If they've kept it off for, if they've done the deal like you do when you get the operation to get the tubes tied, say you spent the 2 years to show that you've kept it off. You do need to get rid of the skin now. I would be okay with those kind of programs, I don't mean me. Like, I don't mean the aesthetics. Like, yeah, I'd like a free skin graft so I don't have so much skin on my thighs that I still can probably deal with on my own. For a little bit, anyway. Not all of it.
Like I said,
Accept reality.
Yeah, kind of, unfortunately.
the only way that I could see the funding for that getting to be fairly popular is, like I said, if it ever reaches a point where you have rampant, massively inflated hospital rates of skin fold infections from the newly non-obese. Otherwise, it just becomes wash yourself a bit better is the normal response, which means that there isn't really a strong indication for why they should be able to, or why they should get that surgery for free.
Mhm.
Though, interestingly, in the areas that are pushing for effectively free, or rather, more accurately, on the government dime transition surgeries, you'd probably have a better argument in those areas than you would in areas that don't. Because if you're going to pay for someone to have surgery in order to bring their body more in line with their image of themselves, when it comes to that, then how exactly would you be able to argue against someone who's saying that, well, in order to bring my body more in line with my image of myself, I need to be much thinner and I need this loose skin gone?
Well, I don't mean it like that. I mean, like, if the loose skin is actually causing you, like, medical problems because of it, too. Like, that, like, the requisitions are there. I'm not talking about, like, I just want it done for aesthetics. And I mean, even then, there are some cases where they do that. Like, if you were born with, like, certain kinds of hair lips, there are certain cases where they'll pay for those.
Well, that's because hair lips also have a whole host of nasty things that happen with them. But like I said, the first case is if there becomes a massive spike in the hospitalization of the formerly morbidly obese due to topical infections of the skin folds, then you'll probably, in areas that are already paying for medical coverage, you'll probably hear more arguments as to why those sorts of procedures should be funded. And then, like I said, the other sort of area is in the areas that are pushing for the government transition surgeries. It seems like it would be fairly easy for someone to then widen out the definition, as all this it seems to go towards, because it seems like there's always this trend of, well, yes, we have the definition that excludes this, that, and the other, but we should expand the definition so that it covers all those things.
I get where you're afraid of what I'm seeing. The thing is, though, I would be really strict with where I'm coming from. So one of the things with the program is you really do have to show that you're making progress. Otherwise, you're not going to get anything. Like, even to the point where before you can even get the stomach surgery, you actually do have to prove that you're going to do shit. Like, my brother has failed probably 3 times.
Yeah, it's like going into a lot of these things. They send you to therapy. You're under counseling.
Yep.
We had to go to a nutritionist. There was a lot of stuff we had to do.
And thankfully, when it comes to a lot of the weight loss surgeries, those do tend to be fairly soberly minded when they're thought out.
Well, yeah, because they're afraid of him not breathing on the table when they open it up, and with him, that is a thing. Like, he had.
And I'm saying, in general, they tend to be fairly good about making sure that no, we aren't just going. This isn't your one weird trick to lose weight fast. No, this is a fucking surgery. Realize that this is a surgery. Take it seriously. Whereas there's a fair number of things that should be taken seriously that aren't taken anywhere near as seriously. So I'm saying that, yes, the weight loss surgeries, they do a good job of keeping a sober mind about them.
I'm just thinking, like, if they were to continue on with the skin, you would have to prove that you're still willing to keep on with the program. Like, you wouldn't get it overnight. You'd have to prove that, yeah, I've done everything I can to try to minimalize it on my own, that I've kept off the weight, that I haven't tried to bounce back. Because that's kind of the fear when you do a surgery like that, is like, yeah, I've just wasted my time on you because you just regained it all anyway.
Yeah, but that's what I was saying with the reason why the bariatric surgeries tend to be fairly easy to get certain areas to agree, yeah, we'll fund those, is due to the preventative nature of bariatric surgeries. Because we have all these different factors that bigger people tend to cost healthcare systems a hell of a lot more than smaller people. So if you can reduce someone's weight and reduce their portion of the medical costs under the system, then you will. It's the reason why in the US, for instance, damn near every insurance company has it built into the policy that, yeah, if you're going in for a physical, you don't pay a goddamn thing. Because they're going, if you go in for a physical every year, that decreases the amount that we'll end up having to pay in the long run, even if we make that physical appointment free. Because it means that if there's something wrong, it's going to be caught sooner, which decreases the cost of actually treating it. So it's a preventative step. It gets funding. The skin folds, they don't get funding because it's a more difficult argument, since it isn't a thing that has really been looked into, that we've been able to look at all the data for the past 10 years. And yes, if you have skin folds of this depth, then you're going to cost the healthcare system this amount of money more than if you don't. So it becomes we save the money. Yeah, if you want to get rid of those skin folds, you can pay to get it done, but why would we pay? It's not preventative anymore. And that's why I was saying that if there's a sudden spike due to the number of weight loss surgeries, that we notice, a lot of the people after weight loss surgery have these skin folds, and the ones that have this excess skin and the skin folds, they end up using this amount of the hospital budget versus the ones that don't end up with this excess skin or pay for the surgery themselves. Then it would probably be more likely that the government would come in and go, okay, so in order to save the, let's say, 20% additional hospital costs, yeah, we're now going to pay for this because that saves us 20%. And even after paying for all these surgeries, that still has us in the black. You get what I'm saying?
Just a whole lot of headache.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I don't know.
It's the standard of where is the money best spent, and
yeah,
And how to keep out people who abuse it.
it's always interesting though. You first?
Sorry. I was just going to say one of the ways they started trimming here is best use of a doctor's time, like your primary practitioner's time. So
Yep.
they started allowing doctors to charge for forms, because forms are now no longer considered necessary. So, for example, if you are getting health insurance, and the health insurance needs your doctor to create a huge, like, fill out a few pieces of paper, a stack of paper with your health history,
Mhm.
that can go $200+ depending on how the doctor feels, how annoyed the doctor is with you. They have a range they're allowed to charge, up to a maximum, and they can damn well ask the maximum. And that's because the MSP or BC provincial healthcare no longer pays for it, because
Yep.
it has been a waste of the doctor's time. So in that time could be used seeing like 3 more patients, you know.
Mhm.
So a lot of these stuff, which, you know, on one hand is pretty good if you have your own practice, if you're a part of a practice, because it is income for the practice. But then what happens is that you make a lot of people very angry. But you have to draw the line somewhere. You really do. And
Mhm.
the doctor's time is based on, it should be for doctoring, not filling out Blue Life or whatever, Sun Life, Blue Cross forms.
Mhm.
That the patient should be able to fill out, because it's basic patient knowledge, but for some reason they want a doctor to fill it out, you know.
And the thing that always cracks me up about the various cost-cutting approaches that government bodies especially undergo, because in private sector it tends to be less strange. When it comes to government, though, they'll try to find every little corner that they can cut while hiring more and more administrators to find more corners that they can cut. And I'm going, perhaps just get rid of some of the administrators?
Yeah.
If you get rid of this massive, overly bloated administration that you've popped up into existence, it would cost less? Because you're paying those people. It's not like you just have a bunch of volunteer administrators. And this is in the US. I'm not sure if it's the same in Canada, but in the US, this is where
Well,
all the waste ends up going. It just goes into this ministerial class.
it does sound very familiar, but it's that's more in like actually in the what's it called,
Direct government.
in the right in the governmental thing. So not
Yep.
necessarily, because that's where for us it happens. So we're not talking about the hospital administration or anything like that. Like straight up in there, you've got the scenario of too many cooks in the kitchen, right?
Yep.
You have all these people, and then it's confusing, and they don't update properly all the rules and regulations, and then you have to go onto the college, the physician's website, and you have the old doctors have a special website that you get all the rules for, and then you're constantly trying to get the updated stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not, you're not it's a mess. But yeah, that's exactly, I'm sure it's an arm of the government. Of course it's like that.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we'll get more and more pencil pushers because that's going to help us get ahead. It just makes everything stupid.
And it also seems, at least in the States, this happens when government money really starts flooding into an area. So an example of this is with schools, even universities. Universities are non-government run entities, but one of the things that I know is due to my parents. My father is a professor at a university. I'm not going to go into any details about that, other than they publish their accounting breakdown. So how much money that they get in is spent where.
Okay.
And Yeah, in their accounting, it came out that. So, how much would you think is spent on professors
As opposed to
as opposed to everything else? So, administration, groundskeeping, shit like that. You'll have the obvious. There's going to be costs. You'll have to get janitorial staff. You'll have to get groundskeeping, shit like that, because you have property. But when you're looking at how much a university spends on the professors, supposedly the thing that they live and die based upon,
probably the least amount, honestly.
what percent would you say if you had to guess?
Ooh, maybe like 18 to 21%, something like that. I'm trying to remember like the fees I had to pay.
That would be over doubling.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, their published numbers were 8%.
Okay.
8% of the university's expenses was paying for the professors. What the fuck? Where's the rest of the money? A good chunk of that, a lion's share, and I'm almost positive a plurality of that, was administration. I don't know the numbers for everything else, but the administration was north of 40. So 8% on professors, administration north of 40.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. Let's think of an average place. You'll have, say, a professor of anthropology, right?
Yep.
One of a small handful in the anthropology department. In that anthropology department, you're looking at the secretaries of potentially the secretary of the dean of that department. You've got a bunch of admin staff that work in the department. You might have people working in the exam if they have a separate, like if they do exams by department as well. Enrollment, I know here for science, enrollment is separate. So like, well, you do it all online. If you need to get in a specific class, science has their own enrollment. So you'd go speak with the dean of the science faculty. You definitely have different faculty head offices for the different areas too, but science is a bigger one. So there's that. Yeah, I can see there's more people. You might have, say, 3 admin to 1 professor or something like that. It's still ridiculous because at the end of the day, you'd hope that you pay for your instruction, but really you get out of it what you put in. I suppose your
See, all the people
effort,
that you
but
named,
still.
they make absolute sense. The problem is that factored into that as well is, so you have certain groups. Are you guys familiar with what let's see, it's IEPs, I think, is the term for it.
I've heard of it.
What is it? I'm sorry, I haven't heard.
So if someone has a disability, disorder, whatever, they can file for an IEP. So it allows them to get like extra time on tests, shit like that. You have to
use a computer, like a computer lab for an exam, that kind of stuff. Okay.
You have to bring in paperwork to get it signed off on, and once the school has the actual diagnosis, they're able to go, okay, yep, we can work with you.
Okay.
So it would make sense to have an IEP office, right?
Yes.
Every university has one. Most universities have the Black IEP office as well.
Because it has to be separate?
And the Hispanic IEP office.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay.
So
I see what you mean.
That's where the bloat comes in. There's a bunch of really sensible things. Because, yes, having the department secretaries for each of the major departments at the school makes absolute sense. Having the admissions staff makes perfect sense. The admissions staff doesn't necessarily have to be as large as it is at many schools, but you have to have an admissions staff. Then you have the IEP and you have shit like that. But the fact that they then multiply pretty much all of those by about 3 or 4 because they break it up into other groups where it's not just you have one group that does this, but no, you have 4 groups that do this for various religious, ethnic, and racial backgrounds. And you're just going, why not just get rid of the excess, merge them all into one like they should be, and rock with that?
Because if you don't have an administrator who looks like the type of person you want, you're gonna feel you're not getting the full fair treatment. And they don't want to be embroiled in controversy, so that's how you get 10 departments that do the exact same thing, and you're having to pay everyone the same price, the same hourly wage.
I think I've mentioned this before, but I used to work corrections, and corrections was another beautiful example of this. So at the prison that I worked at, and at every prison within the state, there was, of course, the HR department. Makes sense. Pretty much everywhere it needs an HR department. Deals with the people that are being hired, deals with all the paperwork. Makes sense, right?
Sure.
And part of what the HR department is also supposed to be making sure that the people that work there don't constantly butt heads. Makes sense. So that's overseeing professionalism. Then you have, at the prisons, you have a bunch of different people that are in charge of overseeing policy. So you have the normal command structure, where you have the sergeants, lieutenants, assistant wardens, that shit. They, of course, oversee policy. And they also make sure that people aren't butting heads. So they oversee professionalism and policy. Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So the state decided that there were some issues with the Department of Corrections, and they decided that they were going to make a brand new group in order to smooth things over. So they made a Department of Policy and Professionalism, which was meant to oversee policy and professionalism, make sure that people weren't butting heads, make sure that the correction officers were interacting appropriately with the offenders, and also make sure that the policies were being followed at the prison.
Oh my God.
So that office was made. Then a little bit of time passed, and they realized that there was a problem with the Department of Corrections. So they decided that they were going to make an Office of Professionalism. So they made an Office of Professionalism.
This sounds like a freaking sketch out of Monty Python's or something.
Yes, it does. Because, so it was HR, the normal command structure, the Office of Policy and Professionalism, the Office of Professionalism. They also started an Office of Policy. Then they started an Office of Professionalism and Policy, an Office of Professionalism in the Workplace. And there was one other office that I can't remember exactly what its name was, but it was effectively just another, let's pick these random words out of a hat, and they will include policy, professionalism, and workplace.
Oh, geez.
So we had about 6 different HR departments in each prison.
What a waste.
Along with the normal command structure. Each of those people in each of those HR departments made more than your standard correction officer. Do you know what one of the major problems at the correctional facilities was?
The fighting between these departments that are supposed to uphold professionalism.
Massive understaffing of the correction officers.
Of Jesus. So they basically, these prisons are all staffed with these redundant admin people. And there's no correction officers to correct the prisoners.
So if you take all of the staff at the facility that I worked at, if you look at all the staff, you look at the teachers, the damn it, I'm blanking, the clergy members, because they of course have the prison, I can't remember the proper term for them, and I don't know why. Yes, prison chaplain. They have the prison chaplaincy, so they have like 3 or 4 different chaplains, and then they have the various maintenance workers, I already said education, the administration, all that. If you take all of the people that are hired by the state to work at the prison that I worked at, and you put them versus the number of offenders, you end up with 3 offenders for every 1 staff member. That sounds pretty good, right?
I guess so.
Sounds like that would be fairly safe, because if you have 1 staff member for every 3 prisoners, man, you can really get a localized benefit of numbers. You can really make sure that you have more staff in an area than you have offenders if something goes wrong, and you can just get it solved like that, right?
I think so. Sure.
If you look at the number of correction officers per offender, I'll just take one of the holes. I won't even do the entire prison. It gets worse when you do the entire prison. But doing one of the holes, the hall with the greatest number of staff in that hall, it was worse than 50 to 1.
Wow.
That's including the correction officers, the CO1s, CO2s, and sergeants, as well as the lieutenants for the hall. You had about 50 to 1 or worse than 50 to 1. Because bloated administrations, am I right?
Yeah.
It is a constant problem with government funding and government systems. You get this in education, you get this in corrections, you get this goddamn everywhere where the government ends up sticking its finger. It's just administrations start blowing up to an obscene degree. And every time that they go, there's a problem, we'll make a new office to handle this problem. They never look at, do we already have an office in place to handle this problem?
But looking at it, that'll take 2 seconds. It's difficult. We could just throw in a new thing.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that if you make an entirely new department, that's something that you can hang your hat on, because you can't say that I didn't do anything while I was in office. I made this department, and this department. A really good example of this is something that when the pandemic was fresh and new and everyone was talking about it constantly, you had the people that were saying Trump closed down the special office that Obama had made in order to track infectious diseases and pandemics. You guys had heard that line before, right?
I didn't, actually.
So,
and the fact it's a crock of shit, and the fact that because he actually just rolled it into, I think, the CDC proper.
What he did was, so the office was a special office that Obama had made. He had placed a person in charge of it that was, of course, a party man when he put him in charge. And he then gave them funding, gave them staffing, and had them report to, I can't remember the specific council, but they had this one council that they reported to.
Mm-hmm.
Trump came in, and as he was getting all of the, okay, who reports to who shit together, he realized that there was an office of almost the exact same name that reported to the same people, that had more funding, had a larger staff, and was more critical in their abilities, because that office was the Office of Biowarfare and Pandemic Prevention versus just the, I think it was the Office of like Infectious Disease and Pandemics.
Okay.
So what he did was, we have a bunch of people that are hired in the Biowarfare and Pandemics office that are doing fantastic work. They have all this equipment. They have all these networks that they've already established. They're doing important shit here. Then we have this office that was just made under the previous administration. The person that was put in charge of it was not someone who was a specialist in that field, but was someone who was a loyal man and offers nothing to the actual office. There were some rather skilled people hired to this office. What I'll do is I'll roll all the people that have an important function that they serve in this office that wasn't being served in the other office. I'll roll them into the other office. If the other office needs anyone in addition, I'll let them select from the people that were in this office. I'll get rid of the one that was just popped into existence, even though it was entirely redundant. Just purge that from the books. I'll save money on it while getting more effect from the money that we're already spending. And yeah, the only person that was fired at the end of it was the person who was put in charge of the office. He was the only person that lost his job.
Kind of sucks to be him.
But
Oh well.
when the pandemic started, people were just absolutely livid that the office that was supposed to be in charge of this was just completely scrapped by Trump. Never bothering to look into the fact that, no, all of them are still employed in pretty much the same office, just they realized that it was entirely redundant, so they rolled the two separate offices, getting separate funding, into one office, getting one route of funding, and the amount of funding that that office was getting was less than two offices combined were, but it was more than either one was getting at the end of it. So it was saving money while giving more money to actually do the work without two people completely siloed, not knowing what the other one's doing, probably doing the same fucking thing twice.
Yeah.
So it was just a, what the fuck? Because the government loves just making new offices. It looks fancy. And you get to say, I made this office. See, I did something. Without ever actually having to do something. Or see if what you did actually works. Because if it doesn't work, then you just make a new office.
Kind of makes me think of China with all those empty condos that they have in like various cities for no reason.
Yep. The cities that they predicted that they would need, and because they just tried to do planned economy, realized, oh, we fucked up. So now they're just abandoned? Yeah, that happens all the goddamn time.
Full of ghost towns this world is.
Amazing.
It's just, what the fuck, people? What the fuck? And like I said, it just constantly happens with the government. They just, we have a problem. Make a new office. Okay, new office made. Did it fix the problem? I don't know.
Who cares? You have a legacy.
Yep. And that's the main problem. That it would be one thing if they would make an office and then actually look at whether the office did anything, or make a law and then see if the law that they made fixed what they made the law to fix.
Yeah.
But they never do. A perfect example of that is when you're looking at a lot of the placement programs and a lot of the welfare programs that are created. Like, there were a bunch of programs created in order to increase the rate of black home ownership in the United States. Do you guys happen to know what the result of those programs is? Do we have more black homeowners now after those programs than we did before?
Yes, probably not.
Do we have the same number?
Do tents count?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Jen is actually fairly accurate because we have fewer. And not just slightly fewer, we have drastically fewer. It went from something like 40% before the programs were instituted to, I think it's 20 to 30 after the programs.
I wish I was this psychic with lottery numbers.
Wouldn't that be
But-
nice?
No one ever bothered to go back and see what the effect was. It's kind of like, let's raise the minimum wage, and then they raise the minimum wage, and they never bothered to look at, okay, so
So
what
employment
did
rates
that do?
drop.
Yeah. Do we suddenly have more people earning more? Wait, you mean that we have fewer people earning money, and the people that earn money, the amount that they just gained does not really account for the amount that we just had drop out? Oh, shit. Yeah, no one ever does that part of the analysis. They
That
just
doesn't
go,
make sense.
we did the thing. Aren't you happy? And then they immediately start going, well, clearly the problem was we didn't raise it by enough.
All right, right?
Never bothering to look at, okay, did this fix the problem? Did it create a new problem? And is the new problem worse than the original problem?
The answer is yes.
Pretty much always, yes.
Jesus.
Yeah, there's a lot of other people that have done the actual number crunching for this type of shit. Like, if you look at the percent of workforce involvement for a lot of the increase in minimum wage was meant to benefit black people because they were being seen as always working the lowest pay job. So in order to help the black people, we'll increase the minimum wage. And when you look at the workplace engagement or workforce engagement before and after, yeah, there's fewer black people that are engaged in the workforce after each time. Which, if you're...
That's very interesting.
Yep.
Why? What's the reason for that? Like, what?
People get
Is it
priced out.
Okay.
Think of it this way, Sora. If you had a position that you were hiring for, let's say it's a position that not overly skilled, but not exactly unskilled either. Let's go for basic secretarial position that you're hiring. So you have one person that comes in and says that they'll do the job for $10 an hour. You have another person that says that they'll do the job for $25 an hour. The person that says $25 an hour, you look at their resume, and they have credentials in spades. Just absolutely amazing resume. You know for a fact they will be able to do this job, and they'll be able to do this job well.
Mm-hmm.
The person who's offering to do the job for $10 an hour, you look at their resume, and there's a couple things that might be able to fit, but you aren't 100% sure. So it would be a bit of a gamble. If you are allowed to pay the person $10 an hour, then you might be willing to take that gamble, won't you?
And you could, for $10 an hour, there you could always train on the job because it's still cheaper.
Yep, you can train on the job, and if they don't work out, you can sack them and potentially hire the $25 an hour person without too much of an issue.
Mm-hmm.
But if the minimum wage is $20 an hour, the person saying that they're willing to do the job for $25 an hour is still saying that they're willing to do the job for $25 an hour. But the person who would have been willing to do the job for $10 an hour is now saying, well, it has to be $20 an hour. Which one are you probably going to hire?
Well, the one that's least likely to screw up. The best.
Yeah,
We
it's
want the better what's it called, resume there.
yeah, it's closed down the gap to the point where it isn't a, yeah, I'm willing to see if this person pans out.
Yeah.
Because even if they do pan out, it isn't really saving you all that much in the long run. Plus, you have a headache if the person doesn't pan out. So they get priced out of the market because now they're having to request the $20 an hour, even though they're dodgy. So at most, maybe you'd be willing to go like $15 an hour to give them a shot, but that's below what you're allowed to pay. So you just don't ever go for that person.
And it's also full-time work kind of is disappearing too.
Yep.
Because the higher you go up, the less likely like, oh, that's okay. We can hire 2 or 3 part-time employees.
Mm-hmm.
They end up doing the exact same work as 3 full-time employees because that's what's going to be in their contract.
Yep.
And
these people, we
you
don't
pay
even
them
have to
part-time.
do the benefits that we normally
Yeah.
pay out.
Exactly.
Because that was a thing. Benefits used to be a standard way of employers competing against each other.
Here, government, you want benefits to go government. Most places don't have because most things you don't need for, right? Because it's covered under standard medical. But for anything like additional stuff, yeah, you're going to want to go to a government job.
To completely and utterly refute that, dental care, prescription drugs, physiotherapy, anything outside of the surgery proper, in some cases being knocked out for surgeries. Not covered.
Not covered by the government system is what you're saying?
At least in Ontario. BC might be different.
Okay. But,
we have pharmacare in BC, so if you are under, you can qualify for it. If you've qualified for it, you can get most of it covered. But it's certain people. And if you are at the level where you do not need pharmacare, then you can afford most things, potentially. But yeah. There is some places provide dental through provincial for us.
Yeah, it's something that used to be what employers would do as an added little perk because they could negotiate it for a cheaper rate by negotiating in bulk. Makes sense there. And they would end up saving a little bit of money from their end, but it would be a massive payout for the people that got the job. That was the whole point of places starting to offer the insurance and benefits and shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
It made that employment more attractive. But a lot of restrictions came in from the government. A lot of that became more standardized. Prices became more ossified. So it was, well, you were less able to really compete to a drastic degree on that. So now it ends up being somewhat, not entirely, but somewhat, one employer's coverage is damn near the same as another employer's coverage, reducing the effect of trying to compete through that method. So now it's pretty much just looking at the employment, but when you're looking at part-time versus full-time, a large part of the full-time perk are those benefits. So increasing the pay just screws people out of the benefits, because then their hours are cut to just below that, which saves the company money. You hire a couple more full or a couple more part-time to cover what you would have to do for full-time, and
or you can have full-time, but it's on contract. So six months to 6 months. They don't get benefits.
Yep. Yeah, there's a bunch of ways around that.
They're not even considered employees per se.
Yep.
Of the
and
company.
All the ways around were defined by the government rather than defined by the companies. So it just keeps on causing more fucking problems each time that they have one of these great ideas of how they're going to benefit everyone. They'll slap them in place and never bother actually going back and seeing, okay, did this have the effect that we wanted? Did it have any untoward effects? How do we fix this if it had problems?
Mm-hmm.
No one ever pays attention to that, so they just go on to the next thing of, okay, so clearly raising the wage to this was not enough. We need to do this plus 50%. And that will be the magic number. And a lot of the shit that they tried to do in order to take over for what various non-government entities did in the past have also resulted in more fuck-ups. Because a lot of the school funding was to make up for, it used to be, in the United States. You guys are familiar with the term robber barons, right?
Robber barons? Yes.
Robber barons, yes. It is a term that annoys the hell out of me, because when you look at what the people that are dubbed the robber barons ended up doing, or a chunk of the people called robber barons. Some people, it's accurate calling them robber barons. Other people, not so much. Like, have you guys heard the name Carnegie?
Sure, like Carnegie Mellon, that kind of stuff.
Carnegie Mellon, Carnegie Hall, Carnegie Libraries, shit like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Carnegie was one of the people that's dubbed one of the robber barons. The reason why there's a bunch of performance venues, libraries, and schools that are named Carnegie is because Carnegie dumped a hell of a lot of money into starting a bunch of public libraries, a bunch of schools, and a shit ton of performance venues. The government is now the one kind of insisting that no, we'll cover the public libraries, we'll cover the schools, we'll cover this, we'll cover that. Mm-hmm. And the quality is not exactly up to snuff. Then you had one of the worst things. You guys, of course, have heard of the Fed. and how it tries to ease the economy along, right? Do you guys know where they got that idea?
No.
Donkey, do you know where they got the idea? Because I feel like you might. And you're muted if you haven't realized. Okay. Do you know where they got
the Federal
idea?
Reserve?
Yep.
As far as I understand, it was an apparatus created by a bunch of bankers, Rockefeller among them, artificially creating a miniature depression in the 1900s, I should say.
Somewhat backwards there. So it was inspired by something close to what you just said. The thing about it was that you're familiar with JP Morgan, right?
Mm-hmm. Money lenders and banking and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And he was a man before it was a business name.
Mm-hmm.
So JP Morgan was, again, one of the people that's noted as a robber baron. He got massively into railroads, bought up a shit ton of the railroads, and then got into finance. Started up a bunch of banks and a bunch of lending companies and shit like that. He, at one point, got the federal government on his ass because they viewed him as building up a monopoly, which, fair enough, he pretty much was. But it was a monopoly that wasn't really an undue monopoly. There were other monopolies where they were government-supported monopolies that were established. Many of the robber barons actually earned their money by going after those government-supported monopolies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's one guy who the city of New York had hired to do all of their transport work within New York when it came to ferrying things in the harbor. And yeah, one of the other robber barons earned his money by undercutting that man at every turn that he possibly could while still making a profit. But JP Morgan was gone after because they viewed he was making a monopoly when it came to the railroads, and he was to a fair degree. Then a recession started. And everything looked like it was going to shit. JP Morgan knew a bunch of the other robber barons because the fantastically wealthy have a way of getting to know each other.
Sure.
And he went to them and went, look, if this shit goes sideways, it goes sideways for all of us. Not just for the people that are lower down in the social strata. Not just the underclasses, not just poor people. It goes down for everyone. And it could ruin all of us just as easily as it could ruin any of them. We have money. We can throw our money around. We might be able to stop this. So he convinced and bullied and just wore down a bunch of the others, and they started to spend their money where they could, where it seemed like it would do the most good, and it worked. They ended up turning what was going to be an absolutely hellish recession headed towards a proper depression into a stable time that then led into a boom. Without it being a bubble.
Again, bear in mind, the strongest theory of what caused that recession were the very people who profited most off of it. The very people you are referring to.
There's some debates off that. There's no real debate that many of them did profit after pulling it out, like like I said, JP Morgan, he had been gone after by the federal government for potentially starting monopoly. And at a certain point of this effort, one of the other major rail line companies was going under, and it was going under fast, which would have completely fucked up half the country as far as rail lines went. He was the only person at that point that had the money to purchase it, and he was able to buy it and turn it around, and the federal government had to kind of go, okay, yeah, we can't really tell you not to, because if you don't, the US is fucked. Fuck. So they allowed it. And he did benefit after the fact from that. It was a bit of a gamble, but he gambled well. So yes, there are some issues. There were other robber barons that were absolutely responsible for some of that. There were a number of interesting government allowed monopolies that were a large part of it. But after seeing that a group of fantastically wealthy people were able to buy their way out of a recession for the entire nation, the federal government decided that if they can do it, why can't we?
Because you spend 40% of your budget on useless shit.
Yep. Yeah, it turns out that having a bunch of people that don't have their fingers on the pulse of the economy, that aren't beholden to turning a profit, that don't really know what the fuck is going on, giving them control of the money to avoid an economic collapse doesn't really work out as well as it does when you have the people that are literally driving the economy forward, constantly looking at, okay, what business is going to fail, what business is going to succeed, what business might fail unless they get money at this point, and then they'll become an amazing success. Yeah, it turns out those people are a lot better at determining where to throw their money, especially when it's their money and not someone else's money that they have access to. There are legitimate things that the government does. I'm not saying that the government shouldn't do anything. But there's a lot of things that the government does really poorly, and a lot of that stems from them never really looking at, okay, did we succeed in what we were meant to do? Or did we fuck it up? And if that question isn't asked, you're never going to be at a point where the successes are far more consistent than the failures. You need to look at what the actual effect of what you do is. And it's just infuriating to me that this keeps on happening, where the government keeps on going, well, we'll just make a new department.
When in reality, 40 to 60% of government workers should be fired immediately and their jobs should be removed.
There's a massive amount of redundancy, to say the very least. And then there's also the departments that just go completely goddamn crazy and just start doing things because they want to do things.
Well, the other thing too is, and I don't know about you guys having this problem, but we certainly have it up here, is the fact that once you're employed by the government, it's almost impossible to get rid of you.
Yep, we have that exactly here. Pretty much, in order to get rid of most government employees, the most reliable way of doing so would be getting rid of the entire department that they're part of.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you can prove that they've partaken in corruption.
Yeah.
Fucked down rather than fucking up. Are you guys familiar with that way of phrasing it.
No. Is that like
So it's a
Taking
bit
a-
of
Abuse of power.
it's a bit of a joke where you're allowed to screw up, you just can never screw down. Screwing up is fucking your boss. Screwing down is fucking your subordinate.
okay.
You won't get fired for fucking your boss. You will get fired for fucking your subordinate.
Gotcha.
So, if you're able to prove corruption, them screwing a subordinate or someone else that they have power over, or them committing some horrendous illegal act, you can fire them. If you can find them embezzling, you can fire them. If it's just they aren't very good at their job,
You're screwed.
it's goddamn near impossible.
And that's a problem.
Yep.
No other workforce has that.
Well, teachers' unions.
Yeah. But aren't they a little bit government?
The teachers' unions
Certain
aren't
nursing
government.
unions too.
Yeah. Unions had a point. Most unions lost the goddamn plot, though. Because it went from, we're going to support the good people that do these jobs and we're going to try to advocate for them,
Mm-hmm.
to we're going to have 27 different professions all under the same union, which makes no goddamn sense because you could have competing unions there. But they're going to do that, and because the most loyal union members are the ones that know for a fact they wouldn't have a job if not for the union, we're going to go to bat for everyone that we can unless they're a shit stirrer within the union. And then fuck them. And that is where they fucked up. But that's why you have teachers' unions really going to bat a good chunk of the time for people that should have never become teachers. You have the government employee unions really making sure that you can't fire that person who you aren't quite sure that he could find his asshole with his thumb. You have police unions also cause problems where they will defend police officers that really shouldn't be defended.
Mm-hmm.
And they will leave out to dry officers that should be defended but are not exactly the most pliable to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was constant. I mean, when I was a correction officer, there's a union that the correction officers were part of. And damn near every email that we got from that union pissed off pretty much every correction officer. Like, the lead up to... Correction officers, for those who don't know, are one of the most conservative, if not the most conservative, government employees. So, if you were union for the most or one of the most conservative professions, you would think that you wouldn't try to piss them off, right?
That seems just too much of a logical mindset there, Sanguine.
Yeah, the major problem is that we would get things like, we support Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We're behind them 100%. And all of us would be going, fuck. Because we know that money given to the union was going to those.
Mm-hmm.
We heard that there are a bunch of people that are concerned about whether or not they're able to get the proper identity on their license. So we're pushing hard in order to make sure that people can get the identity that they want. And we're going, what the fuck does this have to do with the fact that we're being underpaid? We don't give a shit about
I
that.
can't hear you. What's this about underpay? Oh, do you want your pronouns on your ID?
Yeah.
No, money. ID? Pronouns? Okay.
Yeah, it was just pissing us off because every email that we got would be about some shit that we're going, this has nothing to do with us. Why are you spending our money on it? What the fuck is wrong with you? Just stop. And we'd be getting screwed over by the union talking about that shit. Meanwhile, we're being screwed over by the state in negotiations. Like we were having shortly before I left, we had about 1.5 officers either retire, get found to have gone dirty, or just leave for a different job for every one officer that we had come in. And we were getting forced to work a full shift every 5 days, and a couple times it was dangerously close to getting more than every 5 days. To the point where my entire shift was forced one night. Or one morning, rather. And we had to force, like, 4 people in order to even get enough people for my shift, which is was the smallest shift at the prison, to function. There was one night where we had damn near half the shift that night were people that were forced OT. And during contract negotiation, the state said that there's no problem with attrition rate at the facility. And if correction officers are really saying that they need more money, working more overtime is a fantastic opportunity to boost your earnings potential.
Jeez.
We're all getting burnt out and losing people constantly, and yeah, no staffing issue. And have you thought of working more in order to get more money?
Oh, I'd just be fucking pissed.
It was a slap in the face. Everyone was pissed from that. But yeah, that's why anyone that thinks that the government is really efficient at shit, I really just want them to get a job in some low-level government position. Not one of the nice, cushy office positions. No. Be a correction officer. Be a police officer. Be a state-employed or city-employed fire or EMS. Do something like that, and you'll just suddenly be going, okay, we need to get as much of this away from the government as we possibly can, because holy fuck do they not know what they're doing.
Well, they sleep in Parliament, you know? Like, I know they sleep in yours. They certainly do in ours.
Shit, our president slept in a meeting of global leaders.
Yeah, and then he farted in front of Camilla long enough that I think she suspected it was wet.
Oh, I feel sad laughing at the elderly.
Yeah. But then there's our prime minister who really doesn't have that excuse, and he was still kind of weird anyway.
Well, you hired a drama instructor as...
I'm still in awe at how many people he had to take with him. Like, His Royal Majesty had, like, so many people go with him. I'm like, that's so many of our tax dollars.
I still find it hilarious that when the president visited the Vatican, the Vatican had rules in place for reducing carbon emissions as well as COVID restrictions, which resulted in, when taken in combination, an absolutely obscene motorcade for the president. We'll quickly double check the number because it would have been like 3 or 4 cars normally for the motorcade, but let me double check how many it was. Because I want to say, yep, I was right on the number. It was 85 vehicles.
Facepalm.
So,
The hell for?
due to the Vatican's restrictions for COVID, and this was right ahead of the climate summit, the president ended up having a motorcade of 85 vehicles because as part of the Vatican's COVID restrictions was you couldn't have more than 3 people that were not cohabitants in any single vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So the president's security detail had to be split among 85 different vehicles.
That seems stupid.
And this was also, they had other restrictions due to the Vatican going very climate savvy, as they would say. But yeah, it resulted in an 85 vehicle motorcade right before a climate summit.
Well, at least you can agree that he generates buzz.
Well,
He's not
given the fart in front of Camilla, it's a bit
Generates
more than just a
something.
little. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard he also
Oh.
pooped at the Vatican too. So I mean, I don't know.
Yes, that is a rumor that thus far has not been entirely confirmed, but it's apparently the rumor going around the Vatican that the reason why his meeting was so long was he had a bathroom accident while visiting with the Pope that had to be addressed before he was able to leave.
Oh, no.
Which, the only thing that I could really describe as a bathroom accident would be someone shitting themselves. Or at the very least, pissing themselves.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why Camilla was making such a big stink, because she was probably suspicious.
She wasn't making the big stink.
No, she wasn't. I think she was just suspicious of that fart. I think she was just like, was that wet? Was it though?
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine her saying it like Drunkle too. Was it though? Oh.
But it's,
No.
oh, go ahead.
No.
Just know.
Just no.
Yeah, it's clown world now, Sora. Get used to it. It's been like that since, like, you know.
Honk honk.
Right?
It's just absolutely obscene, the shit that's been going on, and I'm just sitting here going, what the fuck? How, what?
See, for the last little while, I've just been too like tired to really like pay attention too much about what's going on. And like every time, you know, I pop my head out mostly because due to minions and people being like, you know, from the States, a lot of the fine folks we hang out with, I just say screw it and go back into my little hidey hole because it's not worth it. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, every time you poke your head out, it's a little bit more on fire, and a little bit more on fire, and a little bit more on fire, and you're like,
Okay, that's fine.
So, since you just recently poked your head out then, did you hear about the fact that, so, you know, the Young Turks has been reporting on Kyle Rittenhouse for over a year now, calling him
And
a
this
murderer,
whole
saying
thing,
that
how they
he's-
actually didn't watch anything, didn't do anything, they were
Yeah,
just running their mouth.
they never watched the
The
videos
tape.
from it.
Yeah. Beautiful, isn't it? Just
Yeah,
unsurprising.
especially since the entire time that they were doing their coverage, they were routinely saying, and the video shows this. The video shows it. How the fuck do you know what the video shows if you never looked at the fucking video, you cunt?
Mm-hmm.
And then immediately after going, yeah, so we never watched the video, they immediately then made additional claims that are also refuted by the video, so they still haven't watched the fucking video.
Are you seriously trying to explain why the Young Turks are a bunch of lying shitbags?
I'm not trying to explain it. I'm just absolutely gobsmacked.
It's not just them though. It's some of the legit media, like
Oh yeah, they've been trying to backpedal.
If Rittenhouse gets acquitted, we have a second Sandman on our hands.
oh yeah, because some of them were reporting that the men that he had shot and killed were black.
Yep.
I'm like, are you for real? Anyone could look that up. Like, most of the world knows what these people look like because
That
those
ginger
videos-
midget was the weirdest looking black guy that I've ever seen.
you know, like
He
those,
identified as black.
like those videos have been out since it happened.
Oh, so that was why he was allowed to use the N-word at a Black Lives Matter or protest.
He cut the end pass.
But yeah, like this whole coverage has really opened up a lot of people's eyes because anyone can watch it. Anyone can watch it, and they have been. And been like, wait a second, none of what you've described about this kid has been true.
See, the thing is that as many people
there's double
have been
downers
coming out and going, okay, yeah, I was wrong, I was lied to, I did not know this, and I'm going, okay, good on you for finally realizing it, but that means that this entire time you never bothered to actually look at this shit.
Mm-hmm.
How the fuck? And then, as much as there have been those people, there are also the people that are doubling down. They're trying to goddamn make the pedophile their latest martyr.
Mm-hmm.
Straight up, like, putting him in a laurel wreath and talking about how he saved people's lives that night. The fuck?
Yeah.
It's absolutely baffling, the mental gymnastics that I've seen people go through when it comes to this. And I'm glad that there's some people that are finally realizing that, oh shit, I was wrong. I was wrong this entire time. And I was wrong because I was told that one thing had happened, and it didn't.
And a lot of the people who are doubling down are really just being exactly what we've been saying for the longest time. Like, everyone's known that Hassan Piker is a shitbag. He's still a shitbag. Like, you can sit there and be like, you know, I'm not sure if the tears that Kyla was crying were real or not. That's fine. Everyone has their own opinions on that part. But yeah, he really hammered in on some kid having a PTSD moment. Like, and he didn't watch any of it. None of the court filings, any of it. He's just been going off of whatever news reports he goes off of.
Is and probably the echo chamber they inhabit, right? So they're all saying kind of like the same thing over and over again. So yeah,
it's just a lot of the same shitty people just being shitty people, and it's like, you know what, that's you know, and they seem to have a following of shitty people, and I'm like, that's fine. It's just amazing how many people are shitty.
Yeah, the only other instance that was even more baffling to me that it was a big thing for any period of time was the one cop that shot the girl while she was mid-stabbing another girl in the neck.
Mm-hmm.
And people were pissed off about that. That's the only instance that was even more, what the fuck is wrong with people?
There was that tweet yesterday though. That was pretty quick on the what the fuck scales.
Which one?
The one to Lauren Chen. Like,
yeah. So, do you want to tell everyone what it's about for those?
Oh yeah. Just real quick, she was just responding because a lot of people the other day were freaking out because the judge made a dad joke about Asian food coming late because of the shipments being late. And she was just like, yeah, it's a dad's joke. And some guy was just like, don't you know this is about human trafficking? And she's like, wait, what?
What?
As I said yesterday, the only way that could make even a shred of sense is if you took you know why cannibals don't eat Chinese people?
You get hungry again half an hour later.
Yeah, they'll be hungry again 30 minutes later. Seriously, and thought that was just a statement of fact that, oh, that's why I'm hungry after I eat Chinese food. That's the only way that makes any semblance of sense, is if you take that joke seriously. Because what the fuck? How the hell do you turn a comment about Chinese food into a comment about human trafficking? It's not like he said, hopefully the masseuse will be here soon.
It's
that
just
one, perhaps you'll be able to make a human trafficking joke out of.
It's just they meme themselves. They meme themselves right in front of you, and you're just like, I kind of agree with Monkey. Your life makes me sad.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like we've somewhat wound down.
Yeah,
and it is about that time.
Mm.
Shall we go round the horn and do our parting thoughts?
Sure.
Let's start with Jen then.
Parting thoughts. If you're old and you know that there's a good chance you're going to be passing wind, don't eat a lot of ice cream.
Okay.
Paying to the man your taxes sucks, and I hope everyone has a good evening.
Okay, let's go Donkey next, if he hasn't passed out and is snoring while on mute. And he might very well have, because he hasn't unmuted after it was being tossed to him. So, Sora!
It is approximately, I think, 12 or 13 days until American Thanksgiving, which means it's officially 14 days until we can put up Christmas lights.
Yay!
Yes.
If you want to celebrate with the American friends, otherwise, screw it. I just bought Christmas lights today because we needed some new colors.
Yeah, you need to give the holidays their proper time. Don't go putting your Christmas shit up before it was Halloween. Don't do it immediately after Halloween. You need to get all the major holidays to have your time.
I mean, technically our only major holiday in November is Remembrance Day, and that's past. So I think now that we've celebrated our veterans,
I might have offered to send Sinatra some leftover turducken. I kind of told him that it just kind of got passed around a lot during the holidays. It was kind of hard to get rid of. It was worse than the fruitcake. But he said no.
I would have liked to try it, but I just don't want to spend the money on something that I probably will not like to eat and then waste and have like be forced to eat it because it's a waste of food and
Oh,
money.
I know you don't get what I mean. I'm gonna post a special picture.
Uh
Just for that.
oh. Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm gonna put it in. You know what? I'm gonna put it in the Discord where you shared this stream.
Okay.
I hope this is the right one because I made 2 of them. All right, there it is. Yeah, it is that one.
But yes. Oh, was that the last of your words, Sora, or did you have anything you wanted to tack on?
No.
Okay. Wanted to make sure before I knew that I'd cut you off.
Thank you.
So, Donkey, final opportunity. And
Actually,
apparently it is also being shared here.
Actually, I think I did that wrong. This would be easier if I did it. No, actually, that's not bad.
What
Yeah,
does it say?
that's Turducken. Kept trying to pass the Turducken, but they kept saying no to the dark meat.
Ah.
Okay. Boo.
The only
Hey,
real
Johnny.
problem with the Turducken dark meat is that the boot black really affects the taste.
I know, right?
But I'll leave off with my standard of if you're passionate about something, make sure that you devour it. Don't let it devour you. And with that, oh, Donkey finally became unmuted. Oh, no, he didn't. Never mind.
No, that was
So,
Jen.
ignoring that.
That
She
was
lost-
me.
Yep.
She lost
No,
her.
I meant to stop stream, and I was like, stop avatar. But we're good. We're good.
Okay.
Boomer moment.
So, with that, have a good night, all. The zoo is closed.
Good night.
Good night, guys.